There is one man who is very cool, and he is a cool international lawyer and one of Israel's most powerful and most eloquent advocates. He's also a professor of law at George Mason University Law School and a senior research fellow at Heritage in Washington, D.C. And his name is Eugene Kontorovich, and he joins me today. Shalom, Eugene. Good to have you with us.
Shai, great pleasure.
Eugene, the news has become such that if you're not watching the news for like 30 minutes, you're out of it, right? So, instead of me kind of pinpointing a question, I want to start with a more general question, which is, what's hot in your mind right now? Israel fought against Iran in a battle, maybe not a complete war. Seems like that battle has been won. From top sources that I hear from, the Iranian nuclear thing has been not just like pushback, but really, really, really pushback. So there's definitely a sigh of relief. There's no question. My mom is like, there's no rockets flying. There's a sigh of relief. But how do you see the world today after the Am Kilavi war, the battle that we had with Iran? Is the world a safer place, a better place? How's Israel doing?
World's a better place, and I think Israel's a better place. And Israel's a cooler place, to touch on your previous discussion. But, sometimes when you're cool, that also generates resentment. This operation, this war, battle, whatever you want to call it, was, I think, stunning, miraculous, and historically significant. And we can see that simply by looking at what people were saying beforehand. So beforehand, people were saying Iran's a huge threat, but too bad Israel can't do anything about it. That was the Thomas Friedmans. That was all of the conventional policy analysts. Even in Israel, where people could not afford just throwing down their hands and saying can't do anything about it, conventional estimates of the army was casualties would be 100 times higher in the best case scenario. Right? This was like 97% of the expected casualties, and not in the worst case scenario. We know that it was amazing because everybody who says, who tries to poo-poo it now, was not saying that it could be done before. We did what everyone said could not be done, and we did it without a single military casualty. That is stunning.
That is stunning.
We killed their generals like they were nothing. Destroyed their nuclear reactors, blew up their airplanes. They could not score a single military casualty. And in fact, it is only the fact that Israel is merciful and is not into just killing people for the sake of it, that the Iranian regime continues to exist.
Well, some people don't see that as a kind of good type of merciful. Some people challenge the leadership by saying, okay, but you didn't finish the job. You kind of left, it's like pulling up weeds. I remember my father would say to me, if you don't pull it up by the root, it's just going to grow back. So there is that critique saying, you didn't go for regime change. Other people say, regime change is not yours to make. Let the Iranian people do it themselves. And I think that there was a great effort to try not to strike at the Iranian people, to get the Iranian people on the side of Israel. There was amazing videos. There was incredible videos of the Iranian people. I played them last week. Amazing videos of, it looked like, the Berlin Wall type thing and the toppling of Saddam. It really had that feel to it. But still, other people critique and say, Israel, you didn't go far enough. You didn't go all the way. What's your response to that?
First of all, I think the events that we saw were so momentous and so overwhelming that I don't think anyone is in a position to critique. And certainly anyone who did not, was not saying that this was going to happen, that we could have such a successful result, is not in a position to poo-poo it. That said, it's our objectives in a war in Iran are going to have to be very different from our objectives in a war with Gaza. In Gaza, we say we cannot leave Hamas in power. Why? Because they're right next to us. Iran is 2 countries over. So it's not really simple to change a regime. You can do massive amounts of damage, but in an authoritarian regime like Iran, and we're seeing this now, their most basic competency is regime preservation. You can take away everything. You can take away their air defenses, their nuclear weapons, but that's like, for them, that's all icing on the cake of the repression of their own people, and that's what they really do good. You can see this in all of our neighboring countries. You know, the Egyptian army, you know, gets its ass kicked by Israel, by Yemen, keeping their people down. That is their core competency, and that is a very hard competency to remove solely by air power. So in the, you know, without a significant commitment of troops on the ground, which is seems implausible, it's very hard to go picking governments several countries over.
Okay, all right. Although it's important to note that there were Israelis on the ground, as Eyal Zamir, the chief of staff, mentioned. He said
that makes it even more amazing. But it takes more than some commandos to bring down a regime.
Right, I understand. Okay, so then let's move closer to home. You know, there's the and you and I discussed this off air a lot. There's the poo-pooers and the naysayers, and then there's the kind of, you know, the wowers, people who are like wowed by what's happened. October 7th, Israel was the chips were down. The situation was bad for Israel. Enemies overriding our borders, people, civilians being killed, threats from Hezbollah, from Hamas, from Iran. Now, almost 2 years later, Hamas has been greatly weakened. Hezbollah greatly weakened. Their puppet, the regime that supported them, has been overthrown, and Iran has been struck real hard. But again, the naysayers say, well, what about Gaza? It's like you haven't done what you're supposed to do. One of the main contentions is, where's the refugees? How come there's no refugees leaving? The Trump administration said, make refugees, get people out of the war zone, protect them by making them refugees, which is what has happened in Ukraine, what has happened in the Syrian civil war. So, like, you know, and people are dying. Just today, a young soldier from Ra'anana was killed. So in fighting in Gaza. So some people say, come on, you can't in 2 years take care of this terrorist organization playing in a sandbox 400 kilometers, you know, in size, and you can't take care of it, Israel. What kind of army are you? So what do you say to those poo-pooers, naysayers?
So first of all, they're partially right. There's a marked difference between our ability to deal with a large, let's say, terror group in a small territory of Gaza, right next to us, and our extraordinary abilities against the mighty Persian Empire. And there's one obvious difference. And that difference, of course, is hostages. Iran is not holding hostages. Now, by the way, there's a big Jewish community there, which is now apparently being greatly repressed. And
right. I think there's been 700 arrests of the Iranian Jewish community. Speaking of hostages,
out of a community of 8,000.
Right.
But we don't relate apparently to them as hostages. I think that's correct. We should not let the country of Israel be held hostage by this. And I think, if anything, the right response is to start taking Iranian generals prisoner, captive, in exchange for the Jewish community. But the hostages taken on October 7th are an Achilles heel. That is an ability by Hamas to limit our operations, blackmail us politically and psychologically. And there's a reason the army hasn't done more, right? They're afraid to hurt the hostages. And that just shows what a powerful weapon these hostages are for Hamas. And that's something about which policymakers need to constantly take into consideration. That is to say, it is as much of an equalizer as the difference in strength between Israel and Iran. That's how much power it gives to Hamas. That's one thing. And in terms of refugees,
let me just challenge one point, which is, you said needs to take into account. Well, that's debatable. I think I would argue that we're taking it too much into account, and that in fact we need to fight a war.
Need to take into account that this is a vulnerability that we have,
right?
And they need to make plans for that, right? They need to understand how much this exposes our weakness. In terms of the refugees, but more people, I think, have left Iran via the Turkish border than have left Gaza via the Egyptian border. More people, like in 12 days. And wow. that is because Turkey lets people in, and Egypt doesn't. And the question is, why is Egypt allowed to keep Gaza as an open-air prison while getting $3 billion in U.S. support? It gets in terms of in relation to its GDP more U.S. military assistance than any other country. Israel gets $4 billion, they get $3 billion, and that $3 billion means a lot more to them. That is their military budget. So they're being allowed to do it, and that's the horrible thing. A part of the also, I think, reason is it's hard to say, but there's a lot less enthusiasm of third countries to receive Gazans than Persians. I think that's a realistic thing.
I think nobody wants to agree with that.
In places where there's Persian communities, no one, they're practicing medicine. And people, look at the Glastonbury Festival today. People don't want that, exported necessarily to that country, the extremism that it breeds. But mostly the Gazans are being weaponized and used as sort of human shields, not just by Hamas, but used by the international community and used by Egypt as they want them there in Gaza to suffer, because their suffering is the greatest weapon against Israel. And one thing I would like to see President Trump, who I think has been absolutely terrific about, is being a little bit more leaning into this, right? He came up with the Trump plan. It's his idea, but he's the only one who can make it possible, because the Trump plan is not Israel expels the Gazans, because Israel is not going to do that. Rather, the Trump plan is let the Gazans leave, but it's not Israel who's holding them back. It's Hamas to some extent, and Israel can deal with that. But other than that, it's Egypt, it's the United Nations, and it's only the United States who can say to Egypt, let those people go, let your people go, let the Gazans go. They don't have to stay in Egypt, but they need an option. And it's clear that Hamas is horrible for them. They hate Hamas. They want to escape Hamas, and they want a better life.
So you're saying that President Trump can do more. It's his plan to open up that border with Egypt. Egypt is basically a client state of the United States. Before we go on to the question of President Trump, and I actually did very much want to ask you about that, you mentioned Glastonbury, the music festival there. Is this guy's last name Villain? Is that the guy's name, like Bob, or is it like Violin or something? I don't know, but like I read it, his name is Vyln.
He has a very regular hyphenated English sounding last name, actually. That's like his stage name. Oh,
well, as we say in Hebrew, Kishmo Kenhu, as his name, so he is. I read it, Bob Villain. Let's take a look at this video for a second together and just see, it's in the news. I want people to see, because I am rarely shocked.
Yep.
I'm rarely shocked, because I've been in the business for a long time, the business of Zionism and of helping Israel be strong. But this, I admit, I would say taken aback. I was like, wow, I couldn't believe this. Let's watch Bob Villain at the Glastonbury Music Festival singing. You'll see.
Death to the IDF! 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 Hell yeah, from the river to the sea, Palestine must be, will be, inshallah, it will be.
Yeah. Why did I pause?
Death to the
IDF. 1 second. I don't know, it got stuck there. But in any case, we're talking about a massive stage here. And the guy, it's not just Palestine will be free. He's telling us that, the other side of Palestine will be free, which we all understood what it means. Palestine will be free. The other side of that is death to the Jews. And here, he's almost saying it all the way, but now he's just saying death to the IDF, death, in other words, death to Israel, death to Jews. And that's being accepted as a normative call out there at a big music concert. It's kind of, there is an irony that some people have pointed to, that October 7th, also a big, hit of October 7th was at a music concert. And at the same time, in your field, in international law, we see that Ireland is now banning products from Israel. And so Israel may be showing amazing abilities and great cooperation with the United States, bombing Iran far away, taking out its generals and its nuclear reactors. But on stage, literally and figuratively, Israel is suffering at the hands of an alternative message that seeks to destroy Israel and replace it with a Palestine. Like, how do you fight? People say you can't kill an idea, but I don't know about that. I think we've killed many ideas throughout history, but this idea is far from being killed. What do you say?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing here, first of all, it's just as much
Were you
about.
shocked by this video? Were you shocked at all?
I was pretty shocked. It's more about Europe than it is about Israel, I think. I saw some people liken it to the Nuremberg rally, except we see a real decline of generations there with Leni Riefenstahl's filmmaking and cinematography. The Nuremberg rally looked much better than this. It was much better.
Pretty big.
No, it looked better organized. Yeah, this looks like a low rent Nuremberg rally. But I can tell you, Ireland has not passed this law yet about boycotting Israeli products. But they just introduced it in the parliament. They very much want to pass it. And it's not the first time countries have boycotted Israel. In 1951, the Arab League announced a cumulative boycott, total boycott of Israel by all the Arab countries, several dozen countries. And that lasted well into the 90s. And then, of course, it fell apart. And today, the United Arab Emirates has trade with Israel. They're buying all those products that the Irish are going to make it a crime to buy. There used to be this Arab League boycott. They would boycott any company that even did business indirectly with Israel. And to manage all that, they had an office called the Central Boycott Office in Damascus. So now Damascus wants peace with Israel, and they would love to get Israeli products. So now what we're seeing is Dublin is the new Damascus. There's just a shift, right? Mm-hmm. The Gulf Arabs, certainly, they want to be part of the West in many ways. They want to keep the traditions and be part of the West. And they see Israel as something that will give them that bridge. And Ireland, is a mix of anti-Western immigrants and self-loathing natives who have absorbed, the notion that Western culture is contemptible. They can't boycott themselves, right? It's hard to do. So Israel is like the scapegoat for everything they despise about their own civilization, but can't boycott. So it's really more about them, I think, than Israel, and is a sign of their, the countries that stuck to their hostile anti-Israel sentiment, Syria, Lebanon, they went down the tubes. The countries that said, let's get with the 21st century, UAE, Saudi, they had a much better path. And I think we're going to see that in Europe too.
My mom told me that at the recent French military arms expo, Israel was being bought out of house and home. People were lining up to buy Israeli military hardware and software. But I don't think we can poo-poo what's going on with young people globally. It is a trend, and I gave a speech in Washington that I started talking about when you came on, which is like, cool is a national security issue. Is Israel cool right now? We might be cool for the older set, and for the people that buy arms, they're certainly impressed. But how do we get back on the cool footing with young people? Because these young people, I mean, you could say when they grow up, they'll change their minds, they'll become more conservative, but maybe not. Maybe we're entering an era where anti-Semitism is cool, anti-Israelism is cool, and Palestine has edged us out in terms of the cool people that belong in this land.
I think there's nothing cooler than the 12-Day War. It's the coolest thing that the world has actually seen lately. And every little aspect of it is cool. The attacks on the nuclear scientists, the blowing up the countdown to the death of Israel clock. This was an operation that was nothing but cool. I think this will come to be appreciated. I think it is, let me put it this way, reality-based people are going to get it. So Giuliani, the dictator of Syria, he's not our friend, but he gets that this is cool. That's why he said, please use our airspace. The Jordanians are not our friends. Please, can we use our airspace? And we see, as we became stronger and as the success of the operation became clearer, everyone wanted to like shoot down one drone for us to say they were there with it. And I think I think in America, the polls show that it was overwhelmingly popular amongst all ages, at least amongst people on the right. So I think one has to disconnect internet from cool. I would submit that, like, if you were to sort of put any set of policies to the attendees of the Glastonbury Festival, you wouldn't want to abide by sort of any set of preferences that they could put together. I think strength is cool. I think technologically empowered, biblically inspired strength is very cool. And we see President Trump, you may say he's too old to be cool, but he understands what cool is, because that's
he
how
definitely understands that. That's definitely
how he keeps winning elections. And you see, he could smell the coolness of this right away, because at first he was like, this is Israel's operation. Then like, good job, Israel. Then we're doing a great job together, right? Everyone wants to be part of the, and indeed, finally, he did in fact bravely decide to join and then commit American forces, because everybody likes a winner and a complete inspired. So I think, the most dangerous trap we could fall into is saying our victimhood is cool now. Let's be victims. No. I got to tell you, people will think dead Jews are cool in a very different way. They'll think it's so cool they're not going to want to do anything to stop it. That is not, I think this kind of success is going to have a gravitational effect, and will pull other countries either into our orbit or at least create an atmosphere of success
and of deterrence.
Correct.
The cool is also a deterrence. By the way, just let's take a look at, I found a new Instagram account today called Cyber Zionist. Speaking of cool, check this out.
Future, the descendants of an ancient people explore the boundless reaches of space, extracting valuable elements from asteroids. These resources become the foundation for grand megastructures built in space, astonishing in their magnificence and technological perfection. Among these incredible creations will be the Third Temple, a symbol of eternity and spiritual rebirth.
Okay. I mean, first thing, the AI stuff out there is crazy, right? It's amazing what people are making.
I love that. I'm a big fan of sci-fi, and I always wonder when I read sci-fi books. So, like, this is what's going on with the humans. This is what's going on with all the other species. Like, what are the Jews up to?
You got to check out the Cyber Zionist on Instagram. It's wild. That was one of the videos. There's other ones. It's crazy stuff what they're putting out. Okay, one last question that I really wanted to delve in with you. You've mentioned his name a few times here, and no doubt he is a fascinating global player, part president, part king, czar, tsar. Right? He's a figure. I don't even know if he's out of those storybooks. He's just an incredibly unusual figure. He's temperamental. One day he's with us, another day he's saying "F you," and then he's with you again, and then he's threatening the courts that are trying to the lawsuits against Netanyahu. It's President Trump. What an unusual figure in time. So help me understand President Trump as you understand him in the 12-day war, in his recent defense of Bibi. We were led to understand that he's got a thing against Bibi. He's got some issues with him. Now he's out there defending him against Israeli courts. The Israeli right wing is coming to the defense of the Israeli courts saying, why are you getting involved? Other people are like, why don't you guys just shut up? He's trying to fight the deep state. What a fascinating global figure. On the one hand, he's in Qatar's pocket. On the other hand, he's sending B-2s to Iran, and then he says, don't fight anymore, make peace. Just a fascinating figure. It's hard to even know, where he is, what he stands for. But one thing, there was a guy who I spoke with said to me, he doesn't like Trump, and he says to me, but I'll tell you what, he's presidential. Definitely a man that knows how to wield power. So that's my question to you. Who is President Trump? How do you see him?
I understand President Trump, and I think he's remarkably consistent. The key to understanding President Trump is not to believe everything you read in leaked stories from anonymous sources about what Trump is thinking. We have the same genre in Israel. The Haaretz columnists who somehow claim deep insight into Netanyahu's psychology, they don't know anything. And I think it's the same with the Trumpologists. The only way to know Trump is to read what he says, and more importantly, see what he does. And he has always been a critic of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, by which Obama firmly set Iran onto a nuclear footing with U.S. blessing. He has always been a critic of that. He has always said he's not going to give let Iran have a nuclear bomb. He has been remarkably consistent. And, when he makes tactical decisions, we're going to give him 60 days to Iran to talk. People start taking those as strategic. Oh, this means he wants to make a deal with Iran just like Obama did. No, that's what it would have meant if it's Obama, but it's not Obama. And he's been remarkably consistent to those. He's been amazingly supportive of Israel. And he, I think, understands the asset value of Israel to America. He looks around at NATO, which he's very critical of, these countries which can't defend themselves, and says, wow, here we have an ally that's actually worth dealing with, worth supporting, that can get the job done, and really tee us up for a win. So I think we live in an oversaturated media atmosphere, where we're parsing every tweet. You think Donald Trump is temperamental? Churchill and Roosevelt didn't really like each other. Churchill really didn't like Roosevelt. Montgomery and Patton could not be in the same room together. They had to send aides even when they were in the same town. It's very hard to have high-level relationships dealing with big, intense, stressful stuff and not lose your temper sometimes. Donald Trump puts it all on Twitter where we can see it publicly. So we see the friction maybe more than in other relationships. But in that way, he's just, I think, disarmingly candid. And in terms of his actions, they've just been amazingly consistent pro-Israel. And in terms of the prosecutions of Bibi, he wants to get things done in the Middle East. And he's seeing these absurd trials, which by American standards, in America, you can't have a trial go on for 5 years, a criminal proceeding. Right? There's constitutional norms against that. You have to either fish or cut bait. You can't just prosecute someone forever. And of course, he himself has been the victim of all these baseless politicized prosecutions. So I think he also personally relates in a very direct way. So I think it's all kind of honest and amazingly supportive of Israel, not just because he loves Israel, though I think he does feel serious affection for it, but because he sees it as a vital ally.
And how would you put him in a historic? I mean, maybe it's too early, but how do you put him in kind of an historic timeline? How do you see him? Do you see any likeness to him as a historical figure, to something else in the past?
One of a kind. He's definitely one of a kind, but he is, I think, in modern times, he is one of the only presidents the first president to be willing to deal with long-running, intractable problems genuinely. Iranian nuclear bomb. Everybody agrees it's a problem, right? Everyone agrees it's a problem. Everyone's been talking about it for decades. No one wants to do anything about it except Obama, who wants to help. Illegal immigration. No president has come out and said, we love illegal immigration, though, again, Obama and Biden greatly facilitated it. And so, yeah, it's a problem we got to do, but it's hard to do. It's impossible to do. And Trump is doing. And these are existential issues, I think, for the United States. And he's lining up these existential issues and addressing them one after another. It's likely he's going to break some China in the process. But he is dealing with issues.
Was that a pun there? Was that a pun or?
No. Oh, no. No, no. By the way, I think China now is. I'm sure they're revisiting all of their Taiwan plans. I think we just bought Taiwan sometime. And people tell stories about Putin's, he's in Putin's pocket. He likes Putin. Putin calls him up and says, let me mediate between Israel and Iran. He says, why don't you mediate yourself first, right? That's pretty sharp. That's pretty good. He wants to give everyone a chance. I think he's very conscious of his power, and tries to create a framework of fairness even with enemies, but is not going to get swept away by that rhetoric. We've seen a lot of leaders who say we want to try peace, and then they get swept up by the rhetoric of peace. So Trump can keep it in a box, right? If only in the Oslo process we could have had leaders like that, right? Trump says 60 days. 60 days, 61 is when the bombs start falling.
That's right.
We'd be like day 61 is when we'd be talking about like a 2-week renewal, etc.
Professor Eugene Kontorovich, you said that Israel is a real ally because Israel knows how to pull the trigger, knows how to actually take care of business, give the U.S. an advantage that it maybe didn't have before. But listen to what Tucker and Matt Walsh think about Israel. Check this out.
Without being propped up by the United States.
You think so?
Its nuclear program came from the United States. Its weapons come from the United States. Its economy is supported by the United States. I'm not attacking Israel. I'm just saying in point of fact, I think that's true. And I mean, Israel thinks it's true, or they wouldn't have armies of lobbyists and influencers in the United States. Bibi wouldn't have shown up twice in the past 3 months.
Any country, if there is any country out there that fundamentally cannot exist without being subsidized by American taxpayers, then not only should that country not exist, but that country already does not exist. It's not really.
That's interesting.
It's not really a country.
Right? No, it's.
Okay, that was Matt Walsh and Tucker Carlson. Your response?
I'm not sure what that dialogue exactly means.
Well, I think you know what it means. They're trying to say Israel doesn't really exist. It's a fake country. It's propped up by the United States. It needs the United States, and it exists on its dole. No matter that.
These are all definitional things. Applying this standard, right? It turns out lots of countries don't exist, right? South Korea, thought it was a pretty real country. I drive one of their cars. It's very reliable, but they have 30,000 U.S. troops stationed there, right? Israel, 0. Germany's not a real country. They have hundreds of thousands of U.S. troops there and have since 1945. Do they not exist? Right, the entire NATO alliance is dependent on the United States. Does all of Europe not exist? Egypt, as we mentioned, $3 billion a year from the US. Maybe Egypt doesn't exist. Jordan, an important recipient of American aid. Jordan doesn't exist. And of course, Qatar, which Tucker has expressed great sympathy for, has armies of lobbyists in the United States. So maybe they don't exist either. So maybe it's like a Matrix thing. Maybe nothing exists. I think that's the conclusion.
Or the conclusion is that they're purposefully picking on Israel and purposefully. Purposefully. Can you hear me? Did I lose you there? Yeah. Purposefully picking on Israel. Sorry about that. Purposefully picking on Israel and finding ways to kind of, the new anti-Semitism, trying to say Israel depends on the United States. A lot of countries depend
on the United States, but the United States also depends on Israel. There's a question. Iran would still have a nuclear program if it weren't for Israel, and that's bad for the United States. So I think the president was very clear. In distancing himself from Tucker, I've never seen an individual thrown so violently under the wheels as Tucker under the wheels of the president's tweets during the war. Tucker has a large audience online, but apparently that does not, his whatever perception there is that he has great influence over MAGA and Donald Trump is, I think kind of self-created.
Professor Eugene Kontorovich, expert in international law, professor of law at George Mason University, and now also at Heritage as senior fellow, research fellow. Thank you so much for being with us. That was a lot of fun. And did you, just like final question, did you say some kind of l'chaim or did you have some kind of religious, spiritual, existential cheers said or prayer said in thanks for the glorious victory that you spoke of at the beginning?
I thought you were going to say Gimel Tammuz,
Oh,
the
that's also true.
Yortzeit of Lubavitcher Rebbe, which is today, which is also a very important day. I think the movement he started has only become bigger and more important since his death, and I think had a lot to do with Donald Trump being elected. When Donald Trump went to the grave of the Lubavitcher Rebbe during the election, which was at a low point in his campaign, said, this is going to make a difference, because he was doing it because he understood that this is leadership. Now, there's nobody who knows who the Lubavitcher Rebbe is who wasn't already voting for Donald Trump. Right? All of Crown Heights voting for Donald Trump. So he did this out of genuine respect. He wrote a very nice letter today. And yes, I did have a L'chaim for the amazing victory of the 12-day war. We need to be more grateful for these things.
That's right. We do need to be grateful. Eugene Kontorovich, I'm grateful for you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Take care.